Before we begin, let's look at an excerpt from one of Putin's most recent speeches. We're going to put it with subtitles so you can notice the intonation.
Но любой народ, а тем более российский народ, всегда сможет отличить истинных патриотов от подонков и предателей и просто выплюнет их, как случайно залетевшую в рот мушку, выплюнет на панель. Убежден, такое естественное и необходимое самоочищение общества только укрепит нашу страну, нашу солидарность, сплоченность и готовность ответить на любые вызовы.
Sorry, I got a bug in my mouth there. Now, the question many of you are wondering right now is, which traitors is Putin talking about? In this video, we're going to tell you. At the time of making this video, almost 4 million Ukrainian refugees had left the country, but you already know that, especially if you live in Europe. Probably, some of you are hosting refugees in your home, and good for you. However, in today's video, we are going to talk about the other exodus. Yes, we are talking about the exodus of Russians.
Thousands of Russians have fled, afraid a new Iron Curtain will fall.
That's right. Actually, those of you who are already subscribed to our Patreon already know all about this because we covered it in one of our recent bulletins. By the way, if you want to subscribe to our Patreon, you can find all the links in the description. Not only will you be able to receive weekly political analysis newsletter, but you will also be able to get our exclusive merchandising, which is not for sale anywhere else. That said, let's get back to today's story. Ukrainian refugees have received a warm welcome in Europe, and this is not out of solidarity with Ukraine, it is also out of economic interest. I mean, yes, we've not all gone crazy. Ukrainian refugees are almost a godsend for many countries. For example, Poland is taking in more than 1 million Ukrainians. A city like Warsaw has seen its population increase by 17% in just a few weeks. And that is good news. Almost all of these refugees are young people who sooner or later will find a job, pay taxes, and pay pensions. That's right. Doing the math, the refugee problem lies not with the destination country, but in the country of origin. However, if the war ends with favorable conditions for Ukraine, it stands to reason that many of those Ukrainians will return to rebuild their country. However, what about the Russians? Well, let's be honest, no, they're not going back anytime soon. The difference between Ukrainian refugees and Russian migrants is that the latter are fleeing an increasingly authoritarian political system. And this is almost as big a problem for Russia as the sanctions are. In other words, Russia is losing its best workers, computer scientists, lawyers, consultants. A good chunk of this country's grey matter is leaving at full speed. In economic jargon, this has a name, a loss of human capital. And where there is a problem for Russia, there is an opportunity for the rest of the world. Because all that talent has to go somewhere. And believe me, if there's one thing a country can never have too much of, it's talent. And this is where the real issue that we're going to reveal in today's video comes in. Europe is not accepting them. That's right. And you will say, that's to be expected. This must be part of the economic sanctions against Russia, right? Well, nothing of the sort. In actual fact, accepting Russian migrants right now would be an added punishment towards Russia. How are they going to be able to do a cyber attack if they don't have hackers anymore? How are they going to be able to recover their economy if all the best talents have left? You know what I mean? So the question in today's video is, why isn't Europe accepting Russian immigrants? Why should it do it as soon as possible? And how should it go about it? Today, we're going to answer all of these questions. But first, many of you have asked us how you can collaborate with the Ukrainian army and the resistance. Well, the National Bank of Ukraine has opened an account to accept donations from all over the world. This money will go to financing the resistance against the Russian invasion. If you think that this is a just cause and you want to help, you have the links in the description. Please note that this is not an advertisement. No one is paying us to say this, and we do it because we believe it is our responsibility. And now, it's that time again. Let's take a look at a little bit of history. On the 31st of January 1990, McDonald's opened its first restaurant on Pushkinskaya Square in Moscow. More than 5,000 people lined up on that day to try the Big Mac. I know, many of you will not believe it, but for many years, McDonald's in Russia was a novel, cool location where it was perfectly acceptable to go on a first date. It's not okay to do that? It was a symbol of a new Russia that was opening up to the West. Well, as of 2 weeks ago, McDonald's has left Russia. So, all those restaurants that had the golden arches of McDonald's have had to change their name. From now on, Russians who want a Happy Meal will have to go to Uncle Vanya. And some of you will say, well, that's probably better for them. I mean, now Russians will eat healthier. Well, are there people who say these things without taking the mickey? And in case anyone is seriously thinking about it, the answer is no. The fact that McDonald's is leaving Russia does not mean that Russians will become healthier, quite the opposite. Virtually all multinationals have left Russia. This means that Russians can no longer buy IKEA furniture, iPhones, or Zara t-shirts. And even if they were still for sale, they couldn't afford them anymore. To give you an idea, there have been days where there was only a single ATM in all of St. Petersburg. Meanwhile, Putin keeps censoring web pages, and there are thousands of people in jail for participating in anti-war protests. And this is just the beginning. You don't have to be a Nobel Prize winner in economics to predict that the worst is still to come. And that explains the following.
Tech talent flees Russia as Western sanctions bite.
And some of you will say, what's the problem? It's better for the Russians who do stay. More parking space, right? Well, no, it's not. Believe me, this is an economic tragedy. Think of it this way. The most important resource of a country is neither its gas nor its oil. It is its people. This is not a politically correct message. It is reality. Human capital is fundamental to any economy. And as you can imagine, those who are leaving Russia are not exactly the most intellectually challenged. In fact, Russia has been suffering from a continuous brain drain since 2014. We are talking about lawyers, accountants, and above all, computer scientists. It is true that Russia has never been a country of technological paradise, but in a country of over 144 million inhabitants, there are hundreds of thousands of talented people. By the way, many of them are cybersecurity specialists. Remember all the videos we made on VisualPolitik talking about Russian hackers? All those people could find work anywhere in the world and be very well paid. However, the turning point has come with the invasion of Ukraine. Think about it. It is now that the largest multinationals have left. For example, it is March 2022 when the Big Four have left the country. The Big Four are the four largest audit firms in the world. You know, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and KPMG. These four companies employed more than 15,000 skilled workers. Of course, the fact that these brands are leaving does not mean that they have laid off all their workers. Remember that these big consulting firms work as a franchise in the purest McDonald's style. In other words, what used to be Deloitte Russia will now be called something else. Now, they have lost a large amount of their customers. This means that most of the employees are now on temporary leave until they are redeployed to new projects. The question is, are they really going to be able to find new customers overnight? Most likely, no. And that means thousands of people unemployed. People who could easily find a job in any other country. Before the borders are closed, they leave. And yes, that's why I said before they close the borders, because the risk is that Russia will not let them leave. In fact, on all internet forums, they recommend deleting all WhatsApp or Telegram messages before leaving the country. Why? Because the Russian police are conducting real interrogations at the airport. Any cell phone message that can be interpreted as anti-Russian can land the person in jail or prevent them from leaving the country. And where are all the Russians going, you might ask? Well, we're going to look at that right now.
Every man for himself.
I will give you a real example here, although I cannot give names to respect privacy. A Russian IT company with 500 employees had several customers in Japan. In theory, they have not lost them. Now, they have to leave Russia. So, what have they done? Moved to Dubai with a whole team? That's correct. Dubai has not sanctioned Russians. So the CEO of the Russian company has set up a new company in Dubai and moved his entire staff there. But wait a minute, because Dubai is not the only place that is getting Russians. Of course, if you were a millionaire or a high-end programmer, Dubai is a very attractive destination, but it has a problem. It is very expensive. What about the rest of the professionals? Well, in most cases, they are moving to less attractive but more affordable destinations. Countries like Kazakhstan, India, or Georgia have received thousands of Russian workers in a matter of weeks. But who would want to go and live in Kazakhstan? I'm pretty sure that no one has ever said, my dream is to live in Almaty. But think about it. Right now, any place is better than Putin's Russia. For example, more than 25,000 people have already left for Georgia. Among them is one of the best known Russian YouTubers in the West, NKFRZ, who has already uploaded his first video from Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia. In February alone, 44,000 Russians crossed the border into Finland. The previous month, this figure was less than 27,000. And this is where we come to the big problem that we are exposing in this video. What happens to those Russians who arrive in Finland, that is, in the European Union? Can they find a job? Can they buy a house? Can they integrate into Europe? Well, the answer is no. That's right. Europe is accepting Russians as tourists. That is, with a visa that allows them to stay for a few months, but not look for a job. And you might say, bravo, what a smart decision. Who wants bright young people to come and work in Europe? Who needs people to work and contribute to pension funds? Do you understand what I mean here? Europe has two gigantic problems, the pension crisis and the labour shortage. And yes, I know what you are thinking. In some countries like Spain, it seems an insult to say that there is a labour shortage. But the truth is that there are sectors where it is almost impossible to find workers. For example, in anything to do with cybersecurity. European companies are desperate to find cybersecurity specialists, and European states are desperate to find people to pay pensions. So all these Russians who would like to come to Europe represent two opportunities. One, they weaken Russia because they leave it without the best professionals, and two, they help European nations pay pensions and become more competitive. The question is, why is Europe rejecting them? We're going to look into that right now.
Hates Putin, loves Russians.
We have already discussed this in several VisualPolitik videos. All countries have special immigration programs to attract talent and money. Regardless of one's view of foreign workers, no one doubts that it is a good idea to attract talent and money. That explains the famous H-1B visa in the United States, through which thousands of people have entered Silicon Valley. And yes, in this section is where we could put all those golden visas with which the Russian oligarchs entered Londongrad or other places like Marbella in Spain. Suddenly, sanctions have arrived. Perfect. Europe does not want any more Russian oligarchs connected to Putin. Nothing wrong with that. But what about the professionals? What about that Russian hacker who is 30 years old and has no connection to Putin or his government? Why can't he be hired? But are there really so many companies willing to hire Russians? The answer is yes. I'm going to give you another example where I cannot mention names for privacy reasons. Imagine a multinational company in the food sector with offices all over the world. Let's call this company Acme, to give it a name. They have just closed their offices in Moscow due to sanctions. However, from its headquarters in Barcelona, Acme Spain wants to hire the bulk of the staff of Acme Russia. These staff have very youthful profiles they don't want to lose. And here comes the problem. The employees of Acme Russia arrive at the Spanish consulate in Russia and tell them, sorry, we can't process your visa. We can't prove your professional experience. Why? Because Acme Russia no longer exists. It disappeared the day before yesterday. In other words, all these people's resumes show that they work for a shell company, and this makes it legally impossible to process their visas. Check this out. The main way to legally enter Spain from outside the European Union is with the so-called investment law passed in 2014. Almost all European countries have similar laws. This is what we usually refer to as golden visas. In the case of Spain, this law allows you to get a visa in two different ways: by investing a large sum of money in Spain or being what is called a high-level professional. How does the law define what a high-level professional is? Very simple. It is a professional with such a specialized profile that it is almost impossible to replace him or her with a local person. For that, it is necessary to present university degrees and professional experience. Russian universities are not accredited with their European counterparts though, and the professional experience of a Russian is unprovable at the moment. It's as simple as that. European consulates are not accepting the resumes of thousands of Russian professionals, and this has three very worrying consequences. The first is that it sends the wrong message to the Russians. Putin is right. The West hates each and every Russian. Russophobia exists. The second is that Europe is missing a very good opportunity to attract talent and taxpayers. The third is that Europe is not generating the pulling power it needs. Because it is not the same leaving Russia knowing that your only alternatives are Kazakhstan or India than leaving Russia knowing that a much better life awaits you in the European Union. To put it another way, if you're watching this video from a consulate in Russia, get ready. Time is running out. And we'll say it again, time is running out. The window of opportunity is unique. It is only a matter of time before Russia closes its borders. In other words, the Kremlin will have no choice but to ban all of its citizens from leaving the country. It would not be the first time that this has happened. In 1922, the former Soviet Union closed its borders for all of its citizens. In 1961, the German Democratic Republic went so far as to build a wall in Berlin to prevent anyone from crossing the border into West Berlin. Such drastic action would be taken for one reason: Russia cannot afford to lose any more talent. So now, the question is over to you. Can you think of any reason why Europe should not accept Russian workers? Will Europe really ever open doors to displaced Russian talent? What consequences might this have on the war in Ukraine? You can leave me your answers in the comments below. As always, don't forget that here on VisualPolitik, we release new videos every week. So subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell button down there so you don't miss any of our updates. If you like this video, like it so we know, and I'll see you next time.